Hey folks, JR, back for another episode of Fallen Badge. In this episode we're going to be looking into the murder of New Orleans police cadet Alfred Harold Jr., Sergeant Edwin Hosley Sr., Officer Paul Persigo, Officer Phil Coleman, Deputy Superintendent Louis Sergo. Now folks, almost all the source material I'm using comes from the media and also from a book that I'm reading titled A Terrible Thunder, which specifically deals with the shooting in New Orleans. It's December 31st, 1972. Somewhere close to 11 p.m. in the city of New Orleans. Now, it's about that time when the shots began to ring out at the old central lockup for the New Orleans Police Department. Now, that old central lockup building, it's directly behind the police building. The gunman was firing. It was somewhere in a field west of the central lockup, west of a street called Perdido. Now, 7 shots were fired. Police would later say that the weapon was a .44 Magnum Deerslayer carbine. Now, of those 7 rounds, one of those rounds would strike Police Cadet Alfred Harold Jr. in the chest. Now, at the time of the shooting, Harold was inside the entrance booth to the Sally Port. Back in the day, those wishing to become a New Orleans police officer, they had to work in the jail first. Now, at the time he was hit, Harold was running towards the interior door of the jail facility when that big old .44 round traversed his body back to front. And the round had enough energy left that it struck Lieutenant Horace Perez. Perez was a supervisor at the jail. After it went through his ankle, it lodged in the wall behind him. As you might guess, there was an immediate and massive response to the radio call of shots being fired and officers down at the jail. There was a canvass of that field by officers. Now, that field would later become the site of the new central lockup. At canvas of the field, the officers were able to locate a .38 caliber revolver that had the serial number filed off of it. They also recovered spent and live .44 Magnum rounds. Now, from what the officers could deduce, the path of retreat for the suspect, who would later be identified as Mark Essex, led across I-10 into an industrial section of the city. Now, Cadet Harold, he was transported to the hospital, and he was pronounced dead. Lieutenant Perez was treated and released from the hospital. 16 minutes after the shooting at the old central lockup, burglar alarm call was put out by the dispatcher. That was for a warehouse that was located at 1065 Gayoso. Now, Gayoso, that particular address was just blocks away from the jail and was in the industrial section on the west side of I-10. A two-man K-9 unit took the call. Driver was Sergeant Edwin Hosley Sr. He was training a new K-9 officer. His name was Harold Blappert. Well, they made the scene over there, and it's a dead-end street. Gaoso is, that 1000 block. So they got out and they checked the outside of the building. Didn't look like there was a break-in. In fact, Hosley made the comment that the alarm at this location goes off all the time. Well, now they went and sat back in the car and waited a few minutes, and then the representative for the alarm company showed up. The officers got back out of the car and walked up to him, and he asked them would they put the dog in, check the place. They said sure. They said Hosley told Blappert that, it'd be good training, go in with the dog and let you kind of see how we work the dog. So they start heading back to the squad car, let the dog out. Now, they didn't quite get there. A bunch of shots rang out, and Blappert, he was able to hit the deck and gain cover behind the patrol vehicle. Hosley didn't make it. Hosley took one in the midsection, and he fell out on the street and was bleeding badly. So now, within minutes of Hosley going down, call goes out over the radio. Shots fired, officer down. So officers made the scene over there, and there was a window busted out of a business nearby. Now, I cannot for the life of me figure out what building it is or was. Nothing that I've read, even the book that I'm reading, it doesn't really go into which building it was. But that's where the sniper had his nest set up, because there was a hole in the glass. And they checked that building as well. Now, they found a blood trail, because evidently Essex had cut his hand breaking into the building. So they followed blood and live .44 Magnum rounds out the back of the business and onto the railroad tracks. Now, the path would have taken Essex into a residential neighborhood. Now, Officer Hosley was taken to the hospital, Charity Hospital, and he laid up there for 2 months before he died. And he didn't die an easy death. It was a hard death from what I've read. Now, only later would police learn that Essex, their suspect, he hadn't run more than about 3 blocks before he broke into a little church over in Gerttown, the first New St. Mark Baptist Church, and it was located at 1208 South Lopez Street. That's where he laid up for the night. But now, the next morning at dawn, homicide investigators and officers went in, January 1st, 1973. So they're in that neighborhood and they got it locked down. And they're pretty well going door to door. And the superintendent of the police department, he was catching flack about conduct of the police over there in the neighborhood. And I'm sure the mayor's office probably called as well. But anyway, so he called the operation off due to citizen complaints. And according to what I read, homicide investigators and officers were literally standing in the yard of this little church when the order came to cease and desist and leave the area immediately. And yes, Essex was still in the church at the time. It was only a little later, after they had left, that the minister for that church came to the church and discovered Essex and kicked him out. Now, I really don't know Essex movements after his near capture on January the 1st, because he's not going to pop back out till January 7th. But do know that he was living over on Drysdale, which is a fair distance south of the location of the police station there in New Orleans. Don't really know how long he had been in New Orleans. Now, he had been in the Navy. He was actually from Kansas. Supposed to have been a pretty good kid. He joined the Navy and seemed to be doing all right, but he had some issues come up with racial issues with white Navy personnel. Now, I've got work acquaintances. They're old enough, they were actually in the military in the 60s and 70s, and they're black, and they said that the military was not a pleasant place to be if you were of a color other than white. Now, I'm obviously not condoning what Essex did, but evidently what occurred during the military service changed him. Now, he was discharged from the military early. No, he went up to New York for a while and was associating with the Black Panthers there. And then he went to New Orleans. Now, I don't know if he ever got back to his apartment he was renting on Drysdale or not. But as you can see, the graffiti he's written on the walls, if you look at some of that graffiti, it reminds me of what I saw when I was doing the Shannon Street series. Alright, it's January 7th, 1973. Police still looking for Essex. They don't know his name yet, but they know he's around somewhere. Well, he pops up down on Gayoso again. Goes into a little grocery store there on the corner of, and he shoots the grocer in there, Joe Pernicaro. So Essex, he leaves the store. I'm not sure which direction he went, if he went back west or went more in a northerly direction. But either way, though, he crosses a footbridge there on Washington. Now, once he gets across the bridge, there's a fella named Albert. He's getting in his car. Essex runs up to him, said, "Hey, brother, get out." So Albert obviously does what Essex tells him to do. Essex told Albert, he said he didn't want to kill anybody that was black today. He says, just honkies. And he drives off in Albert's Chevelle. Now, police have, by this time, have made the scene at the grocery store. And it's just a few minutes, and they're over there talking to Albert. And Albert's relaying the story and direction of travel of Essex in Albert's Jack Chevelle. That Chevelle ends up in the parking garage at the downtown Howard Johnson Hotel. All right, Essex. He had parked his vehicle on the 4th-floor parking garage of the Howard Johnson. Now, after he parks the car, he's got his Ruger carbine, and he hits the stairs. Now, he climbs the stairs all the way to the 18th floor. Now, he's up there trying to start a fire because he's wanting to cause confusion and mayhem. Well, a fella named Robert Stiegel, he's a doctor. Now, he's on his honeymoon with his wife, Elizabeth. Well, Essex and Dr. Stiegel, they get tied up in a brawl, so now they're fighting. Essex is finally able to get the best of Dr. Stiegel. Shot him. One in the 10 ring. Dr. Stiegel's dead before he hits the carpet. Now his wife, she goes to her husband, got her husband's head in her lap, and she's sitting down on the floor. Essex walks up behind her, puts the gun up to her head, shoots her in the back of the head. Now after he's killed the couple on the 18th floor, he heads down to the 10th floor. And while he's down there trying to set a fire, he runs into the hotel manager, Walter Collins. Now, Walter Collins, he gets shot and killed. He doesn't die there. It takes him 3 weeks to die. So now he leaves the 10th floor and he goes up a flight of stairs to the 11th floor. Now while he's up there setting the fire, the assistant manager, Frank Snyder, shows up in the hallway. Snyder's shot one time in the back of the head and he's dead. Now from there, Essex, he heads back down the stairs to the 8th floor. And he goes out on the patio. There's a swimming pool out there. And there's a fella out there swimming, Robert Beamish. Beamish is on vacation from San Francisco, having a big old time. Well, he catches a .44 slug. He falls in the swimming pool. Now, he doesn't die, but he plays dead. This Essex didn't come over there and put another shot in him. So Essex is, every floor he's hitting, he's setting fires. Mainly to the drapes in the hotel rooms. Now he actually, according to the reports, runs into one of the maids, who's a black lady. And Essex tells her, he says, "Don't you worry, I'm only killing white people today." He tells her to go on and leave the hotel. Now, at some point, Essex heads back down to the 4th floor. He's going to get in that stolen Chevelle, and he's going to head on out, because now he's just doing hit-and-run tactics. Well, he can't get to his car because the police are there, and he has to run back in the building. First person he pops when he's up there up on the roof, there's a firefighter named Tim Urson. Now he's scaling a ladder, trying to get up to some of the rooms, get in on the balcony. Well, Essex shoots him. Urchin's wounded, and they had to bring the wounded fireman back down the ladder. So the police are opening up on him, and they're able to get the fireman under cover and evacuated. Now there's 2 police officers, and they're walking over towards the hotel. They're not really aware that there's actually a sniper in the building. They think it's just a fire. So they're walking across Duncan Plaza, which is it's an area in front of City Hall. And then Solace, he gets popped in the shoulder, right shoulder. Now, luckily for Officer Solace, his partner, Dave McCann, was a medic in Vietnam, Marine medic. So he's able to stop the bleeding, and they're able to evac Solace to the hospital after a fairly long wait behind a tree. Now, 2 other officers pull up on the plaza, Leo Newman and Phil Coleman. Now, according to Officer Newman, he told Phil Coleman, Officer Coleman, he says, now when we get out of the car, get down and keep down, and whatever you do, don't stand up. Officer Coleman stood up, was shot and killed by Essex. Now another officer, a motor officer, Paul Persigo, he made the scene. He's got his motorcycle helmet on, and there's a very infamous picture of him standing by a squad car, and the photo was taken just seconds before he was shot in the head and was killed. Deputy Superintendent Louis Sergo, this is second in command for the entire police department. Now, he's leading a team of police officers up one of the outside fire escapes, exterior stairwells. So they're going up these steps, and the deputy superintendent's out front. Well, Essex pops out, sees them, shoots and kills the deputy superintendent. And after that, we've got gridlock. The police can't get to Essex, and Essex can't leave the building, and evidently he's got a lot of ammo. So now the question is, how do you break this gridlock? Well, luckily, an individual who was not a member of the police department, but was a member of the United States Marine Corps, he had the answer. And it's air support. And thanks to this Marine, the advantage is going to swing back towards the police. Now this Marine, his name was Charles Chuck Pittman. Now he just happened to be Lieutenant Colonel. Now he was in charge of the Marine Air Unit, which is just a little south of New Orleans there on the Mississippi River. Now he told one of his subordinates, call New Orleans Police Department, tell the Marine Air Unit to be happy to help if they need it. Well, that evening, about 4 p.m., I don't know how long it took them to call back, but they called back and they said, okay, yeah, we need a helicopter for searchlight. Lieutenant Colonel Pittman, he got his co-pilot and his 2 crew members. They flew up to New Orleans. Now he ends up landing over there near City Hall, and also they were building a stadium then that would later be named Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Now he cannot, or he does not, use any armaments from the military. The only people that were doing any shooting are the policemen that he loads up in the helicopter. So he gets all the policemen he can fit in there with heavy weapons, and they're going to go up. So they go up, he flies over. Now they're shooting at Essex, but Essex is using a concrete little house building up on top of the roof they use for some of the piping for the water and everything runs through it. But anyway, so they can't get to him. So this goes on for hours. They run out of ammo and he has to land the helicopter again, let the police reload their weapons, and they go back up. And every time they make a pass and shoot at the building, as soon as they pass by, then Essex comes out, fires off rounds, and runs back in and hides. Well, this goes on for quite a while. Eventually, Lieutenant Colonel does a pass, and instead of doing his usual, making a big wide turn and coming back, he immediately doubles back onto the roof, where he catches Essex out on the roof, cranking off rounds at the helicopter. And the policemen in the helicopter, they open up and they hit and kill Essex. Now the figure I saw, I don't know if it's true or not, allegedly Essex was hit by 200 rounds. So when it's all said and done, Essex had killed 9 people and wounded 13 others. Now that number varies some depending on the publication. So on December 31st, 1972 and January 7th, 1973, he had killed 9 people, wounded 13. 10 of those shot were police officers. Alfred Harold Jr. End of watch, December 31st, 1972. Phil Coleman, Paul Persigo, Louis Sergo. End of watch, January 7th, 1973. Edwin Hosley Sr. End of watch, March 5th, 1973.